The first time I heard the drill, I thought it was a woodpecker. That hollow tap, 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 echoing across my fence after sunset sounded almost natural until I realized the rhythm was too precise, too human. I stepped outside, and through the gap between the slats I caught the glint of a drill bit vanishing into the wood. Then came the voice. That tight, self-righteous tone I'd come to dread. "Just inspecting the boundary alignment," said Karen Wilcox, our HOA president. The same woman who once fined my neighbor for hanging unapproved wind chimes. To say Karen disliked me would be an understatement. Ever since I replaced my old fence with a taller one, darker, cleaner, matched my house, she'd been fuming. Apparently, it disrupted neighborhood harmony. Translation, she couldn't spy into my backyard anymore while sipping her Chardonnay. I looked straight through the slats and said, "Evening, Karen." The drilling stopped. Silence. Then a shuffle of flip-flops retreating toward her porch. The next morning I found 4 perfect holes drilled through the fence. Waist height, clean, deliberate. I knelt down and stared through one and realized she'd drilled vantage points into my yard. That was the moment something inside me clicked. This wasn't about property rules. This was about control. I took pictures, sent a polite email to the HOA board. Kept it professional. Possible vandalism on shared boundary photos attached. I knew they'd do nothing, but I wanted the paper trail. In HOA land, documentation is ammunition. 3 days later, the holes were back wider this time and dusted with glitter. Glitter. The same iridescent craft glitter Karen used for her stupid wine glass decorations. That was it. I wasn't just going to patch the fence. I was going to make her regret drilling those holes. So I started planning. I spent hours online scrolling through DIY forums until I found something beautiful: paintball traps. Nothing dangerous, just messy. Exactly the kind of poetic justice Karen deserved. I bought PVC pipes, air valves, motion sensors, and a few cans of bright blue biodegradable paint. My neighbor Tom saw me unloading everything and grinned. "Planning a cannon or a submarine?" "Both," I said. We worked until sunset, rigging the system behind the fence. Each hole became a nozzle mount sealed tight. The paint tanks were connected by tubing and a motion sensor. When something moved within 2 feet on her side, it'd trigger a pressurized burst directly through the hole. We tested it with a cardboard cutout. Worked perfectly. For a week, nothing happened. I started to think maybe Karen had moved on. Then came Sunday morning. I was having coffee on my patio when I heard the creak of her gate and the slap of her sandals on stone. She approached the fence clipboard in hand, leaned in then, "Pfsht." A blast of blue erupted. She screamed like she'd been shot. I peeked through the gap and saw her standing frozen, dripping blue paint down her face, blouse, and onto her precious lawn. Her dog barked like it had witnessed a murder. "You attacked me!" she shrieked. I stepped out calmly with a towel. "That's just my new motion-activated art project. Dieter's raccoons." Her eyes burned. "You'll hear from the HOA. I look forward to it," I said. Within an hour, I got an HOA email subject line, "Urgent Neighborhood Paint Incident." Written, of course, by Karen herself. I replied with photos of her drill holes and a video of her drilling. Subject line, "Clarification on unauthorized fence modification." The HOA's response was predictable. "We'll investigate both matters," which meant they'd do nothing, but they didn't have to. By sunset, half the block had seen her blue-stained lawn. Someone posted a picture on Facebook titled "Smurf Turf Mystery." I laughed until my ribs hurt. But Karen wasn't done. When she couldn't win through the board, she escalated. The next week, a delivery truck brought surveillance cameras, 4 of them. 2 facing her yard, 2 aimed straight through those same holes she'd drilled. She even had night vision. I watched from my window, shaking my head. "Clever," I murmured. "She's trying to catch me on my own property." So I adapted. I modified my rig with upward nozzles and a light sensor. Whenever her camera's red LEDs activated, the system would release a fine mist of white paint toward the lenses, my privacy fog. One night, she bragged from her porch. Smile for the cameras. The HOA will love this footage. Dusk fell. The sensors blinked red, then hissed. 4 soft bursts. A few seconds later, I heard her yell. "What? They're all blank." "Did you jam them?" I smiled. "Maybe it's humidity. Night fog's a menace around here." By morning, her cameras were ruined. The paint had baked onto the lenses like frosting. I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. Then the police showed up. 2 officers on my porch. Karen had filed a vandalism report. I invited them in, offered coffee, and showed them my footage her, drilling her, spying her trespassing. They watched in silence until one said, "Not unless creativity's a crime." Mr. Reed. As they left, I caught Karen watching from across the street. She didn't yell, didn't smirk, just stood there stunned, humiliated. For a while I thought that might be the end of it. Then, late one night, my security camera caught movement again. Karen sneaking along the fence with a flashlight muttering. And unbelievably, she drilled another hole. I sent the footage straight to the HOAC, the community watch she'd founded. By morning, the video was everywhere. Is she obsessed with fences, or what one comment read? Another who brings a drill to a neighbor war at midnight. She'd become a meme before breakfast. Her nickname now, Drill Sergeant Karen. 2 days later, she knocked on my door wearing sunglasses and a brittle smile. "Mr. Reed," she began sweetly. "I think we've both overreacted. Let's put this misunderstanding behind us." "Misunderstanding," I said. "You drilled into my fence 3 times. She forced a laugh. "Minor boundary confusion, but these rumors are hurting us both. If we release a joint statement, repair every hole and repaint your side," I said. "Then, maybe." Her smile cracked. "That's not necessary, is it?" "Completely necessary." She glared. "You're enjoying this, aren't you?" "I'm enjoying privacy, Karen, something you've declared war on." She spun around and stormed off. I thought it was over. It wasn't. That night she sabotaged the nozzles, stuffing rags into them. What she didn't know was that I'd built in a pressure purge. The moment they jammed the system, backfired, paint blasting back through her side. The next morning, her fence was speckled red. By noon, Tom texted me, "She's calling it blood vandalism. Claims you're threatening her life." I laughed so hard I nearly spilled my coffee. That evening, the HOA called an emergency meeting. Clearly Karen's doing. But this time I came armed with footage, timestamps, and receipts. When I walked into the clubhouse, she was pacing near the podium, wild-eyed, clutching her clipboard like a weapon. "This man," she shouted, "has harassed me, vandalized my property, endangered this community." I let her finish. Then I opened my laptop and played the midnight drill footage on the projector. The room went silent except for the sound of her own drill echoing through the speakers. Mrs. Wilcox said, the HOA chair rubbing his temples, "You're suspended effective immediately." "You can't," she screamed. "I am the board." "Not anymore." The look on her face, shock, fury, disbelief, was almost painful to watch. She pointed at me. "You think you've won? You have no idea what's coming." Then she stormed out, red flecks still staining her blouse. That night she proved she meant it. I woke to the sound of splattering. When I rushed outside, my backyard was dripping green paint. She'd hurled buckets of it over the fence. My garden, my furniture, everything ruined. I didn't yell, I didn't argue, I just called the police. They arrived fast, reviewed the footage, and wrote it up as vandalism. Karen and her son Tyler were clearly visible in the video, laughing as they threw paint. The officer looked at me and asked, "Pressing charges?" "Absolutely." By sunset, Karen was being questioned in her driveway while the whole neighborhood watched. Tyler stood nearby, hands in his pockets, looking embarrassed. When they issued her a citation, the crowd actually applauded. Tom walked over, grinning. "Think that'll finally stop her?" I sighed. People like Karen don't stop when they hit bottom. They just dig deeper. And sure enough, she did. The next morning, surveyors showed up in her yard, measuring the property line. She smiled at me through the slats and said, "You'll be rebuilding that fence soon." I stayed calm. My lawyer confirmed what I already knew: the fence was 8 inches inside my property. When her lawyer sent a boundary dispute notice, mine sent back a counterclaim citing her encroachment. Checkmate. 2 weeks later, she cracked. literally. One morning, I heard a loud crack and ran outside to find the middle fence panel smashed open. Tom's camera caught it all, Karen swinging a hammer in broad daylight while Tyler begged her to stop. That was the breaking point. The police came again, wrote another report, and this time the judge issued a restraining order. Karen packed up the next weekend. Boxes, furniture, the dog, everything. She didn't look at anyone, didn't speak. When she finally shut her trunk, she glanced at me across the street. Her lips moved silently. This isn't over. But it was. The HOA replaced her with Denise, a retired librarian who believed in peace and paperwork. The neighborhood exhaled for the first time in months. I repainted the fence, chestnut brown, smooth, solid, unbroken. As I stood there, brush in hand, Tom said, "You gonna keep those paint cannons?" I smiled. Let's just say they're in standby mode. The sun dipped low, casting gold light across the wood. For the first time, I felt the silence I'd been fighting for, quiet, steady, real. People like Karen think they can control everything around them, but sometimes all it takes is one boundary, one fence to remind them they can't.